Good evening, or good afternoon, good morning, good day to you, wherever you happen to be in the train simulation world. And welcome to Train Sim World 2, Q&A number 5. Really?
Five.
Okay,
Number
well,
five.
number 5. Okay, well, joining me as ever is Matt, who's over that, he's that way. Say hello to the children, Matt. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
All right, I'll say hello to the grown-ups. Hello, everybody. And this evening we're covering a wide variety of topics, but the number of questions that were submitted far outstrips our ability to answer them in one stream. So, and this also ties into while we were in the warm-up to the stream there, while the old countdown was going on, I noticed quite a few questions that we have answered repeatedly. So what we're going to do is on Monday I shall ensure that everything we have answered so far and all the questions we don't get to tonight are posted up for you to go and read on your own time. And we'll make that catchy and easy to get to and all of that kind of business. So we'll have a one-stop shop. I don't know if I'll get it all done on Monday. There's a lot in there. But over the course of next week, we'll make sure that every question that has been asked can be found the answer to. Hopefully, completely accurate. But sometimes a bit of a moving goalpost. Right, let's crack on. Let's go. If you want to know what we're covering today, have a look at the title of this stream that you're watching. There you go. That'll give you some pointers. So off we trot. We're going to start with some details about console because we've had quite a few console questions come through. And Matt, is the deluxe edition with East Coast Way, the preserved collection East Coast Way, is it going to be available on console?
Yes, from launch day.
From launch day, and I mean the same goes for the main game. We're not doing a pre-order on console. We've said that before, but saying it again. So given that we're not doing pre-orders on console, is there going to be a discount to either the standard or deluxe version on console?
There's a 2-week launch loyalty discount of 15% on both Xbox and PlayStation. On PlayStation, you're going to need to purchase it through the in-game Train Sim World 2020 store to get that discount. But yeah, there's 15% discount for 2 weeks.
Okay, so it is to follow on. So is Steam getting the 2-week discount at launch?
No, the discount on Steam is pre-launch only. But we are going to run a preserved collection discount on Steam from launch with 35% off Roots and 20% off Locos, covering the Roots and Locos that are in the phase 1 of preserved collection.
So the set of preserved collection stuff that's available at launch. So obviously there will be other sales in the future. If you're new to Dovetail Games, we do sales. That's the thing that happens. If you do want to take advantage of the discount on PlayStation, I don't know, is this true on Xbox as well? But you will need to pick it up from within the game.
Yes.
The only way that we can apply the loyalty discount is if you hit the buy button from within the game. If you go to the store, you won't see the discount. So there you go. Right, there. That's that out of the way. That's that section done. Jobs are good. We keep being asked about Game Pass. We're not going into Game Pass at launch in the future. Don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But we're not in Game Pass at launch. Right, we've got some technical questions. Now, there are more technical questions than this, and we're not going to get to all of them. So I went for the ones that seem to have the most kind of thumbs up, bit of traction behind them and that kind of thing. First off, is what are the changes to... Is there any change to the track render distance? And if I'm on PC, is there a config file or something that I can edit to extend that out further?
So the track render distance hasn't been changed and the configuration of it hasn't been changed. So if you were editing it in an INI file previously, you'll still be able to do that and it will still work the same way it did before. Obviously, that option is not available on consoles. Where we have changed things is that the way things are rendered is now much smoother and cleaner. So it's much more difficult to see the gaps going out. Where it changes, so you can't really see the LODs anywhere near as much. It looks a lot cleaner going into the distance. So even without making changes, the tracks should look better.
So for those who aren't familiar with the term, please explain LODs.
Level of detail. So when you are close to an object, it's got lots of detail, and you can see what's going on, and all the fine details. When it's further away, let's say it's only 10 pixels on the screen because it's a long way away, the fact that it's got a bump on the side of it is irrelevant. You're never going to see it. So a LOD, another version of that model, which is a lot simpler, has a lot less detail in it. So the idea is there are multiple LODs, and the purpose of that is to keep frame rates as high as possible. There's no point wasting processing on things you'll never see. So it manages different versions of an object as it gets further away.
Well, you see, you just said the frame rate question, and we've got a bunch of answers on graphical stuff coming up a bit later in this stream. So if you're about to go firing in a couple of frame rate questions, hold on. We're covering that a bit later on. So when the new consoles come out this year, are we expecting them to perform better with the game?
I have no idea. It's not been tested. I just don't know at this point.
Okay, so we will obviously we'll do some testing before it comes out, presumably. But yeah, no, the new consoles aren't out yet, so it's not a question we can answer at the current time. The next one, these bounce around a little bit, these early questions. We get into some more sort of dedicated stuff later on. Does the weighted wagon system work on passenger trains too, and what does that mean?
So you'll see, I showed this on the Bakerloo line gameplay actually, when you press the pause button and you see the weight of the train, you'll see that going up and down as passengers get on and off the train, and that number is also then used in the physics. So the actual practical difference from a train driver's perspective is barely noticeable, if at all, but you will see it going up and down, and it is impacting the physics.
Okay. Right, it's fine. No. We've got a frame rate question here. Oh, well, we'll answer the frame rate question twice. Is the frame rates going to... But how are we expecting them to compare to Train Sim World 2020? I mean, are we expecting them to improve? Obviously, it's a newer game, so is the demand on hardware going to be a little bit more? What should people expect?
So there's an awful lot of work being done on optimization, but we're also doing more as well with the game. So I think the most confident answer I can give you should expect the same frame rates or better, depending on the situation that's going on in the game at that point. So Sam Patch Grade, was a freight example, runs better than it would have done otherwise. But other routes, expect them to run at least as well as they do currently.
Okay, fine. Now, we're going to move on to the UI. There are some more questions of that nature coming on. Hold your fire. And incidentally, if you are throwing in questions in the chat, it's unlikely we'll get to any or many of those this evening. All the questions that we've got here have been submitted by the community already, and probably half as many again we're not going to get to this evening. But once these Q&A threads start going out next week, if there is something that you are desperate to know that is not already covered, please do post it and we will get you an answer. Right, okay, so let's move on to the UI. Because the HUD and the way it looks, we've had quite a lot of commentary about this. Does the unit of measurement switch between imperial and metric automatically?
Yes, that is a new feature in TSW2.
And you also have the option to turn it off if you would rather stick with metric all the time or imperial all the time. It's your choice entirely. So, but it will inherit based on the route. Yep. What about the new HUD and the UI overall? Can we scale the size of it? Several TV users, so those who enjoy playing from the couch, have said, like, it's going to be a bit of a pain to read this, you know. So are you able to actually scale the HUD?
So the HUD in the bottom right-hand corner now has an option in the settings that lets you run it in small or large version. I think I was running on the small version, if I remember rightly, on the Bakerloo line gameplay stream. But there is a large version as well, which is a fair bit larger. The rest of the HUD can't be rescaled. But I've definitely been reading the feedback that's come in on the chat and forums and so forth, and feeding that back to the team for something to look at. But at this point in time, the HUD in the bottom right corner can be rescaled small and large. The rest of the UI can't be. Okay, so you should at least be able to make out what's going on. What if you find the HUD a little bit obtrusive? Can you make it transparent at all? Can you affect its transparency? No.
Not at the moment, or just... Oh, hold on, no, sorry, I'm breaking my own rules.
At the moment.
Yeah, okay. That's a flat no. Okay, all right, good. Yeah, all right, sorry. Yeah, no, broke my own rule there. Are we able to turn the HUD on and off on console?
Yes, you on the Xbox, you press and hold the menu button, the three lines, the start button, and on the PlayStation, you press and hold the options button, and that does essentially the same as pressing F1 does on a keyboard, which just takes everything off.
Okay. And will the HUD also be changing on preserved collection routes?
Yes. The preserved locos, when they're running in Train Sim Mod 2, will have the same HUD experience as the Train Sim Mod 2 stock does.
Okay. I mean, that's one of the things that has taken time to convert, presumably.
And there's also lots of new stuff that's got to go into that. And the new HUD needs new features to work with the old stock, particularly with trains like the Class 101, for example, which has the gearing and so forth, and even the immersion controls that we've added in. They'll be working with the preserved collection as well, along with the like the gearing and so forth on the Class 101. So that does work as you'd want it to.
Okay, and objective markers. So we've changed up the way that they look now, but have we changed the functionality? So historically, they've always gone as the crow flies, rather than track distance. So if you're having to go up a set of points and then back again, it would say it's 200 meters away, whereas in fact it might be a mile and a half. I've just mixed my measurement systems there, just to please everybody. So do we now follow track distance, or is it still crow flies?
It's still crow flies.
That's something that we are looking to change, though.
It's been on our radar that particularly on a route like Hagen where it doubles back on itself, and then you see your distance going up as you're getting closer to it. So it's definitely something we want to look at. But doing a measurement of distance as the crow flies is insanely quick. Doing it following track ribbons is more complicated. So we've been focusing on bringing some of the performance gains in before we start consuming some of those performance gains.
Okay, right. Let us now turn our attention to the livery designer, which is today's premium subject for conversation. Now, the first thing that has been asked is how many shapes... Actually, I've seen a couple in the chat actually going, is it going to be on console? Yes, everything we're talking about is available on every platform. There's no difference in functionality between the three, except a few minor control quirks, and we'll be dealing with minor control quirks shortly. Let's have a look at the livery designer. So I'm going to switch over because someone said how many shapes, what sort of shapes, and what do they look like, and all that kind of business. I go like, well, let's show them, shall we? So have a look at this. There you go. Right. So this is an ICA3M, and it's being customised by a member of the marketing team. Who was turned loose on it for a couple of days to see what they could come up with. Now, they came up with a few different liveries, but what we've got here is a speed build of just one of them. Obviously, we've sped up the footage quite a bit. This was not done all in one sitting. So while you're watching this, because obviously this goes on for a little while, we'll get to some questions on the topic of the livery designer. So is it going to feature logos from the licenses that we have already? So is there a Deutsche Bahn? Is there a CSX logo that you can just stick on top of your tube train?
No. Licenses for operators are the strict rules about how they can be applied that we have to stick to, and then there's approvals processes for how they're applied. So no, official opera license logos are not in there.
Okay, how about the ability to upload our own images? So if I've got a nice transparent ping of Princess Leia that I want to slap on the side of my train, as you would, easy peasy.
It's not possible to import images of your own either. There's some complexities of that that we want to be able to deal with because they can't be PNGs anyway. They need to be vector graphics so that they can be scaled and so forth, as you're seeing is happening here. But then we'd also say, how do we get them onto things like consoles? So we need to think about what infrastructure might be involved in that. This was something we've definitely talked about. It's not possible in the game right now.
And there's also the very, very, very large issue of copyright,
yes.
which we have to be especially careful of because of the licensing that we do already. There's a lot that we've got to abide by in order to use real train licenses. So I mean, obviously, nicking copyright from various different train manufacturers and operators is one thing. Wanging Princess Leia on the side of your train, that's another copyright infringement again. So we do have some concerns with that regard. Will we be able to design the chassis, the wheels, the roof, or is it literally limited to the skin?
It's the paintable. It's the area of the train that would normally be painted. So, as you can see from what the artist is doing with this ICE3, it's the paintable areas. You can't touch the windows. And it automatically excludes them. So if you take a shape and you splat it over the top of the window and the body, the window is automatically cut out. And the same for things like the grills and the wheels. There, you can slide the decals around however you want, and then they will just not render anywhere they're not supposed to render.
I get it. Okay. So I can overlap shapes over the wheels, for example, but it's not going to show up.
Yeah, it's not. It's not going to. Yeah, exactly. It's not going to show up on the wheel. So you could, if you want to do a triangle which looks like it would be over the wheels, and it shows up on the bodywork either side of the wheels, you could do that without having to try to guess where all the bits would be.
Right, okay, I get it. So will the livery applied to one loco apply to all locos of that class, or can we have different locos in different liveries on track at the same time? What's the variation that we're going to see in terms of liveries in game?
So you've got a lot of flexibility in the scenario planner. You can kind of, when you should create a service and you specify you want to use, say, the ICE3M on that service, if you've got any reskins that you've created in the livery designer, then you can it'll give you a list of all the valid liveries, and you can put them, you can pick this one will be this livery, so you can kind of use the liveries as you want in the scenario planner. In the service mode, because there's more kind of memory constraints to be dealt with there in terms of lots more trains running around and so forth, the way that it works is that you pick which train you want to use via the normal if you've already played Train Sim World, you'll know that you pick liveries by using the livery selector in the service mode screen. The same process applies here. When you go into livery selector, all of your custom liveries will apply in there, will be listed in there as well. And what happens then is that trains that you see on the route will either then be a mix, they will be a mix of your livery that you have chosen or the standard one. So in the case of the ICE3M, it'll be the DB white and red livery or the one that you've picked, such as this one. So there'll be two variants.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, is there a limit to the number of layers in terms of text and shapes that can be added to one loco?
So you can add 300 layers, and one layer contains one shape.
300 and do what now? Can you do that again in English?
So the limit is 300 layers, and a layer is a unit that contains one shape. So if you add a decal of a square, that will be on its own layer. If you then add another square, that's on its own layer. So you add that square, you'll then shape it and move it. You can then go back to the layer and move it around, copy paste it somewhere else. You can duplicate it. You can do lots with that layer. You can reorder the layers in terms of putting things on top of each other in different orders. Sort of functionality you'd be familiar with in many paint programs. But the limit then is 300 layers
per train.
Per train.
Okay. Will I be able to go back and change or modify existing designs that I've done later on, or are they baked and I'm never allowed to touch them again?
Nope. Once you've saved them, you can then come back and you can edit them and make refinements to them. So you've got you can come back. So if you spend a few hours, in fact, that in the case of these liveries, they were built over 2 or 3 sessions. So and if you want to come back and refine it, you absolutely can. Is there a limit to the number of designs that I can store for individual locos? So there's a limit of 300 reskins in total. How you make that up? If you make 300 ICE3 reskins or one reskin of 300 different types of loco, it's up to you. But there's a limit of 300 liveries in total.
How many different colours are there? Now you didn't know this one. We didn't ask this in advance, but everyone wants to see the paint palette. We've got all this pre-recorded. As you can see, color is definitely possible. How many different colors off the top of your head?
It's a standard color gradient, so it's a hue saturation value pickup slider thing. So you have a vertical, horizontal slider where you can pick up all the different. It's this, if you use paint programs and you know what HSV color picker looks like, it is. So it's the standard, probably 16.8 million color picker thing in there. So there's a huge range of colors that you can use to pick from what you want.
Can we use gradients on those shapes, or are they just solids?
Some of so down to whether the decal has a gradient in it or not. So some of the decals do, some of them don't, or most of them don't, in fact, but some of them do.
Is it possible to do weathering using the livery editor?
There's a lot that's possible with the livery editor, and using some of those extra shapes and some of the sort of the slightly weird shaped ones. I think it'd be quite if you could be quite inventive. I don't see why you can't do weathering. It's not something that we've experimented with, but because you can choose the colors and you can put different decals down, some of them have got the gradients on them. I think that it should be something that people can explore, and I'm keen to see what people do.
You're paraphrasing that, or rather, you're elongated phrasing. So when we turned the team loose to try, there's only one person turned loose to make these initial liveries here. What we've got here, I mean, as you can see, we've got the effect of it looking like it's a cutaway with a whole bunch of gearworks inside. Now, we didn't tell them to do this. They just decided to have a go and see what they could come up with. So they've created shadowing and all sorts of stuff there. Doesn't quite work in game, but you know what? For a first swing, it's pretty good. And to be honest, that's what we're going to see from the community as well. So anybody who gets into livery designing is undoubtedly going to surprise us. So
this one surprised us.
Yeah, there aren't any dedicated weathering options in there. Then it'll be really quite interesting. I mean, to see exactly what people can come up with. Is the livery designer going to work on the preserved collection stock?
No.
Okay.
No, there's a lot of work required to remap the texturing to make it work with it. So when we make a model, we'll make a model and we'll optimize the way that we do the what they call the UV map, the way that the textures are mapped onto the 3D model. We'll optimize that so that it's as performance optimal as possible. But that doesn't work at all. You need to be able to put textures anywhere with the remap tool, with the livery tool. So we need to then remap the locos, so retexture them entirely, effectively. So there's quite a lot of work to do that.
So it's a no, but there's a reason for it, rather than you're just being a lazy bones and can't be bothered.
No, totally. It's quite an extensive amount of work. It's very different, for example, to Scenario Planner, which was turned out to be actually relatively light amount of work. This is quite an extensive amount of work.
Okay. Are there templates for letters and numbers in different fonts, or do we have to create them ourselves?
So there's one font, and you can see the font being used here. It's a sans serif font, and there's letters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, that you can use in there. You can see some of them in the layers there that have been applied.
Can we save groups of shapes or decals to be used later? So I can create some presets?
You can't. What you can do is you can take layers, you can group them together so that you can move them around, treat them as one thing, and then you can replicate them within one train. So the some of the logos that have been created in here, like the Colne text there, they've collapsed that into one group. You could then easily stamp that down the rest of the train. What you couldn't do then is to go to a Talent 2 and take that on there, because you can't save those groups out.
You do have a few icons in here as well as the text, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you can see there's actually that's I think a UK tops code. Actually, the thing you see underneath a UK train they've put on the door there. So there's a number of standard decals. There's fire escape signs, there's bicycle signs, there's first class and second class signs, things that will help you detail up a train. So because the train is completely blank, so you can then go into this set of logos as they're called in the UI, and then you can add all sorts of different detailing then onto the side of the train, and then you can fill that in as you want to.
And is it possible to use different types of material? So shiny stuff, matte, I don't know, whatever else people would use. Just, for me, it's matte all the time. But there you go. Anyway, I already know the answer to this, so I'm bigging up the question rather more than I should do because it's a.
It's a no.
All right. Okay. Well, you can't have it all. What settings are there available for each shape or decal? So can we change size, transparency, angle, all of that kind of business? What can we do with it? I mean, we've seen some examples going on here.
Yeah, so you've got you can do scaling, and you can do scaling in a sort of a linked way so that it scales uniformly width and height, or you can unlink it and do width and height separately, so you can stretch and squash shapes and reuse and abuse them however you want to. There's angle, so you can rotate them around. There's shear, so you can bend them or slant them, and I think it's I can't remember what else there is. Transparency is not there in there at the moment. No.
Are you able to change the interior colours?
No, you've only got control over the exterior.
Okay, and this is all coming from the chat, you see, so you're unprepared for any of this. I did see one more that I wanted to ask. Is it possible to edit the original livery as well?
No. We provide you with the game provides you with a white base coat. Train, or light grey actually, and then you can use the paint option you can see on there to put a different base coat on the train, and then you apply layers on top of that. You can't edit a DBICE 3 white and red train, but you could make your own.
Right. Now the last question we've got in this kind of section. Well, actually, we've got two left here. I mean, the first one is sharing, and I'm going to allow you to avoid having to answer this one. So we said early on that you would not be able to share your liveries. That is still true. It is possible to get somebody else's livery on PC, but in order to do so, you would have to take all of their liveries, and they would overwrite your own in the process. So you could take the entire livery collection and replace your own with it, but isolated liveries you can't. I suspect that some enterprising YouTube personage who does a quick tutorial on how to do stuff might find themselves quite popular, but that's just me.
Yes.
So we know that sharing is a very popular thing that people want, and it is under investigation, but it isn't coming. We've got no plans to introduce it at the moment because there are a lot of things we have to consider. So the actual last question is, how do you like the idea of implementing some community shapes or decals later on? This worked quite well for the Forza team, and those who are familiar with Forza's skin editor are probably going, this looks somewhat familiar. So you always stand on the top of giants. Or on the shoulders of giants.
Totally.
If you stood on the top of them, they might waft you off. So how do you feel about taking shape suggestions from the community to integrate further on?
I mean, as we've always said, this is version 1 of the livery designer, and I'm really keen. The decals and shapes are something we absolutely can expand as time goes on, and we're really keen to see what people do, how they use it, what other decals and shapes would help them achieve the sort of their design goals they want to achieve, or might make the things they want to achieve simpler, so that maybe more people can do it. So definitely, I really want to hear what people think about that.
Yeah, I mean, before we go neck deep into ideas that we've got, we want to hear your ideas once you've actually got to use it. You will quickly find any problems that exist with the livery designer. You will quickly come up with functions that you would quite like to see, and we want to hear about that. But until you've actually had a go with it, it would be unwise to start gathering ideas. It's all about figuring out based on some experience. The one thing I will say is that original design you saw there on the BR406, that took around 8 hours to make in total, but that was the very first thing they made. So they were kind of learning as they went, having sketched something out, and the game did crash while they were doing so. So whatever you end up doing with the livery designer, my recommendation is save frequently. Obviously, if you're going to take 8 hours to create something, it's going to use a heck of a lot of different layers. And while we have tested it, the number of times we've tested it is not as many as we would like. So please do save your designs regularly, if not frequently. I'm just putting it out there. I would rather pre-arm people than have disaster. So moving on to the next section, we're going to talk about graphics next, because this is also quite a popular topic in terms of getting the questions in, and the first of which is, can we see lots of clouds in the sky to see how the dynamic cloud system works? Yes, you can. Just look at the screen for a couple of seconds. What you've got running behind us now is 2 hours on sandpatch grade, so you will see a couple of trains come past, and it's sped up to 10 times speed. So this is around 60% cloud cover, something along those lines. It's a moderate amount of cloud, so that there was still some sky present for you to see it happen. So you can judge for yourself whether you like the sky or not. And it's going to keep running behind us now for the next couple of minutes. What is the top speed of an unladen African sparrow? No. What is the typical console frame rates that people should expect to see?
Somewhere between 25 and 30 frames per second. I mean, in some cases it'll be a lot higher, but I would say that most experiences that we've been benchmarking have been hitting 25 to 30 frames per second, which feels actually perfectly fine on the consoles.
You say it feels fine. Your mileage is going to vary there, friends.
Everyone's mileage is going to vary, yeah.
Right. So will this is more. I mean, we've got a couple more console questions going on here, because they felt a little bit like the red-headed cousin there. Are the new routes going to run at 1080p on consoles?
So this one kind of leads into what we're going to talk about next. I don't know whether you want to pre-answer.
All right. Well, okay. I'll ask that question as well. And will TSW2 support 4K on consoles?
Yes. X1 X and PS4 Pro will support 4K, and further than that, if you're running an X1 X but you only have a 1080p television, it will still render it at 4K, but then downscale it to fit your 1080p. It may not be completely obvious why that is or what you gain from that. But essentially, what you're getting there is significantly better anti-aliasing. It's a much clearer, cleaner picture with a lot more detail in it, and it's a full 1080p output from the X1 X and the PS4 Pro. So they benefit from working from that. For X1 and PS4, they'll function exactly as they are currently.
Okay, so just to kind of do a bullet point, too long didn't read on that one. PS4 and Xbox One, you're going to get the same level of resolution as you're getting now. If you have the Xbox One X or PS4 Pro, then you will be able to play at 4K, and 1080p will look crisper if you decide to go for 1080p. Did I miss anything? No, you just said using a lot of words, and I used it using very few words because I'm very efficient. Is the lighting that we're seeing in-game, or rather that we have seen in-game over the last couple of gameplay streams, and the lighting that we've got going on in this backdrop we've got going on here, and when we show it off next week, we've talked before about the number of times we've adjusted lighting bakes, as we've called them, over the development process. Are we looking at pretty much a final bake now, or is there more work still to be done?
Lighting is as it will be. So what you've seen in the last, in the IC, in the German stream, the Bakerloo stream yesterday, and what you're seeing in this video is the way lighting will look. Okay.
Are there any plans to add zoom on consoles for external cameras?
No.
What's the problem with that? Why can you not zoom on consoles at the moment?
Buttons. lack thereof. So we've managed to simplify the controller and make it a lot more accessible and approachable. And in doing so, we actually freed up the joystick for using internally, because you don't need to move forwards and backwards when
Right.
you're in the cab. So we use that for zoom in the cab. When you're outside, that control is used to move forwards and backwards. It's not there for zoom. So I completely see why people want to use that, and it's something we'll rack our brains on. But as at this point in time, all the functions are back to being all used again by the time, but for this version.
So, I mean, is that something that you'd like some feedback on, in terms of, you know, if we're looking for button combinations that players would find usable, is that, you know, we want feedback on that, right? So, how would you
Oh
go
yeah.
about solving that problem? You know, would you sacrifice other controls in order to be able to have camera zoom going on? So you couldn't accelerate or decelerate while using an external camera. I know that's a terrible idea, but just putting it out there. So if you head over to the forums and give us your ideas for how you might solve control limitations, let's say, when using a pad to play the game, we're all ears. Yeah, we're very keen on your. Yeah, obviously, it's going to be combinations. All those going, well, combinations. You kind of go, but which combinations? So,
There's
yeah.
also one thing to keep in mind is that the minute you bring in combinations, then for people who've got slightly less mobility in their hands, it becomes much more difficult for them to use as well. So we do need to think about that as well. And yeah, and how those. Bear in mind, if you use a button as a shift key for a combination, you lose that buttons for current functionality as well. So again, all the buttons being used, so L1 is being used, for example.
Okay. All right. Fine. Is camera camera sway is still in the game? Can it still be turned off?
Correct. Yes, it certainly can in the settings.
Okay, and that's across the board, yeah. So everyone can turn it on or off as they see fit.
Yep.
Is there also the option to switch off the blur effect that everybody really loves?
On PC, there is an option in the settings, a new option in the settings for turning the motion blur effect off. That option, for various reasons, didn't make it into the consoles. So that's something I'm following up on. But at this point in time, if you want to turn motion blur off on the consoles, you're going to need a keyboard and press Control F2 the way you have been doing it. But on
Okay.
PC, there's a settings option now, which will then persist between sessions as well.
Is there a dedicated way to grab a screenshot in the game, or is it the same as it was in Train Sim World?
So yes, on the PC you press Control F10. On the PlayStation you press and hold the square key, and on the Xbox you press and hold the Y. Is it the Y? Maybe X, Y. Hang on, let me get control of it. X. You press and hold X. That will then take a screenshot and show it to you. And you'll say, yes, this is what I'm like. You press a button, it will then upload it to Dovetail Live. So you do need to be logged into Dovetail Live to use this functionality, and that's obviously across all three platforms. That'll then put it up to Dovetail Live, and then you can go onto the Dovetail Live website and do stuff with that screenshot.
So I heard just this afternoon actually that that's not quite made it in for launch. Sorry, you didn't know that, but I did. So yeah, that is definitely coming. Hasn't quite made it in for launch release, because the stuff that we do with Dovetail Live, so things like mastery and other cool features that you're going to talk about in just a moment, they are not going to come in directly for launch, but they are coming immediately afterwards, because we have to get the Dovetail Live stuff authenticated through platform holders separately to the main game. So that is just a smidge behind schedule.
Yep.
What else will you be able to do with Dovetail Live though? Because we've got some other good stuff that is coming alongside that.
So there's one other really, really cool feature. It's something that a lot of people asked for. With the last year, there was some really cool stuff added to allow them to collect your stats, so you could see a bit more of information about what was going on with your what you've done in the past. And one of the big things a lot of people requested was, what about all of my individual journeys? Can I have a logbook so that I've got all of my, effectively, when you finish a service or a scenario, you see that debrief screen, which has got the speed graph and your stopping distances and your stopping times and so forth. And well, that information is now captured and sent to Dovetail Live, and so that will now be displayed in displayable in a logbook that you can access via the website when that comes live. So you'll be able to review all of your previous journeys that have been recorded in that way, which is super cool.
Okay, right. So let's move on to the next segment here. I'm going to put us back to our original selection of what's that? Oh, I see. That's inside a cab. Okay, fine. Yeah, no, I went. That's a weird looking passenger. But then most of our passengers look weird. Look, we're talking about controls now. Will there be full keyboard support for TSW2 on console? There are some missing keys at the moment in TSW 2020, especially the keys for the brake. So what's the story? How are you changing the control system at all on console?
No, there's no change to keyboard and mouse support on console at all. So whatever worked before is the way it will work now.
Okay. Is there going to be a horn button on the controller to operate two-tone instead of one?
That works the same as it does currently as well. So that will only operate one of the tones. If you want to operate the other one, you'll have to actually get hold of the controller and waggle it the old-fashioned way.
Waggle it. Okay.
Waggle it.
Okay, fine.
Technical term.
Is it going to be possible for PC players to remap keys to open doors rather than using the horrible radial menu? Sorry, the radial menu. I can't stand the radial menu, Matt. Does my head in. My head in.
That's why we got rid of it on the controller. And then we started seeing feedback the minute we showed it to people. And they said, that's great. How do we do it on the keyboard? And we all went...
Right.
So the answer to that question is no, but basically.
Right. So it is coming. Functionality like that. I mean, what is the issue? Why is this not a simple fix? Because you told me why this wasn't a simple fix earlier on, and it made me want to just give you ever such a slightly small shake. So what is the reason that we can't map door controls when we can map just about everything else on PC?
So if it is a key that you can use, then you can remap it. If it is not a key that exists at the moment, you obviously can't remap it. What we need to do is to make it a key that has a function, and then you can remap it. So it's not about remapping. It just doesn't exist as a function at the moment that the keyboard can operate. So we need to add that function as something that the keyboard can operate, and then it will appear in the remap screen.
Okay, so I mean that's relatively straightforward, right? Presumably. Relatively.
I don't want to speak for the engineers, but it feels like it ought to be to me. Yes.
Oh, I see. You're chucking someone else under the bus there. Nice. I like it. You're chucking someone else under the train. All right. Well, that will be coming. And for more details about features that will be coming, we're going to be talking about the Train Sim World 2 roadmap. And we're going to release that for the first time on Tuesday. And then we'll have a stream in the evening where we're going to be running... Schnell, Far, Strecker. Between Cole and Aachen again, and you'll be able to ask any questions during that stream. So there is going to be a lot of detail that goes into the roadmap, and you'll be able to get answers to those questions, which will probably be related to the next two as well. So direct input. And rail driver support on PC. This is something that has been requested for a very long time, and we've said it's definitely coming into Train Sim World 2. Is it there next week?
No, it's not there next week. It was always down as being something that would follow. We still don't have a deadline, a date for which we can share with that, but work is well underway. So we have been able to drive a train with a rail driver and a joystick.
And that's the kind of thing that will be on the roadmap. So you'll be able to get a read for exactly how far along it is and build your expectations of when it's going to be released accordingly. So once direct input, rail driver, once they are set up, once they're good to go, can I use those on preserved collection stuff as well?
That would be the intention, yes.
What do you mean that would be the intention?
Until we've done it, I don't know, but I can't see any reason. I mean, none of us can see any reason why at the moment we can't. And all of our testing has actually been on preserved collection locos. Okay,
so as far as you're aware, it's a yes, but it's lightning may strike.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll detail out direct input, rail driver, joystick support. If you want to use your foot pedals or your switchboard or your Guitar Hero guitar. We'll have details about exactly how that will work when this gets a little bit closer to launch. Will it be possible to use the PZB system with a direct button on the console controller or by having a keyboard connected?
So if you've got a keyboard connected on the console, then the page down, end, and del buttons should work. I've not tested that. If they worked before, they'll still work. If you're using a normal console controller, then then you affect the circle button or the B button will activate the PCB acknowledge or the CIFA. So the things you need to access on a very regular basis are on that easy to access function button. If you want to, as and when you want to access PCB free or PCB override, the file 40, then you'll need to actually operate the control itself directly for those two cases. But you don't need to use them anywhere near as much as you do the PCB acknowledge. So that's on the controller.
Okay. And since you can switch gears with Class 101 using a D-pad, if I've got a controller hooked up to my PC or I'm playing on console, it would be really useful, actually, if we could do the same with the AFB.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea and one that we hadn't thought of at the time. So one that I'll pass back to the team.
So on the subject of interesting ideas, we're going to be far more receptive to interesting ideas than maybe we have been in the past. And again, tune in on Tuesday and you'll find out why. But interesting ideas are definitely something that we're going to want to hear after you've got your hands on the game. Because, you know, I can't spoilerize it any more than I already have done. Right, moving on to the next section. We're going to be talking about reward systems because there are quite a few players out there that play with leveling up in mind, with trophies, with achievements, with all manner of shinies that they can get hold of. So action awards, action points and medals and Steam achievements and mastery and challenges and all of that caper. What's changing at all?
So action points is not changing. Medals, other than that you can now see all of the scores that you need for each of the medals, that's not changing. Steam achievements, trophies and so forth, they've had a major overhaul. Mastery is not present from day one. We're still looking at mastery, and challenges that come through via Dovetail Live, they will come through at some point. There's no immediate plans for those.
This one just came through the chat. Is Dovetail Live implementing a leaderboard of some description? Do you know?
It's not on the plan at the moment, but it is one of the many sort of wish list things that we want to do with something like that. Yeah,
and
but it's not.
The wish list
currently
list extends about 3/4 of the way around the world, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Okay. Is there an option to turn off the congratulations? You turned off the cab light. No, the cab light. Have 10 points. So if I'm playing for full immersion, can I turn off the reward notifications?
I think there's an option in settings to do that. I know I haven't been able to get that confirmed.
This
today,
was on your to-do list. You were
it was
supposed
on
to
my
look this
to-do
up.
list. I know, and I wasn't able to get confirmation on that.
We'll get an answer for that one and we'll stick it up on the forums. As we mentioned before, there are far more questions than we can answer in one stream. And in fact, we haven't answered them all in one stream because there were 4 other streams where we answered questions. And we have answered a lot of questions. So we're going to stick them all up in an easy to access place, so that you can go and get as many answers as you need. And obviously, if we haven't answered something after that, stick the question up and we'll get you an answer. Because it makes no difference to us if we answer your question or not. It makes a difference to you, and that's why we want them. Can we earn PlayStation? This is PlayStation 4 trophies. This is your PlayStation 4 trophies question. There were a couple that you couldn't get because they were broken. Do we have a they will not be broken guarantee?
So I spoke to the QA team today and said, have you earned every single achievement in the game and have you got the platinum? And they said yes. So we also did some work with the achievements tech to find and fix the issues. We've also changed the way that the core set of achievements actually works, so that in the base game, instead of having achievements for Bakerloo Line or Kolnaken, you'll get achievements for driving trains, which will then be you'll be contributing to those achievements throughout everything you do in the game, including with other add-ons. So it's driving extra miles, completing services, and so forth. So there's a core set of achievements which you will be constantly building up towards, but they've all been earned.
So we're not going to make you drive that route you don't like in order to achieve all of the necessary shiny things that you're trying to chase.
Not in the core. DLCs might do that. The DLCs will have achievements related to themselves, but the core game has got general achievements.
Well, presumably then, if you don't, you would only have to then achieve stuff that you had an interest in the route or locos to begin with.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any change to the scoring system this time around?
Nope, exactly the same as it is in TSW1.
See, I almost foxed you with that because the answer I've got written down here says yes, but then the question's the other way around. Well done. You're paying attention. That's very good. How will achievements and trophies work with preserved collection?
So as we bring content across, we are recreating all of the same achievements. We are going through them again and making sure they're all earnable. And any achievements we found cause issues, we're changing them a bit. But we are creating a new set of achievements on the new on the Train Sim World 2 Preserved Collection version of the DLC. So if effectively there'd be two sets of achievements, one for Train Sim World 1, one for Train Sim World 2, so those will be going through a new round of QA, and they're all being added at the moment.
So they don't cross over though. So if I earn if I put in 100 miles towards earning an achievement in Train Sim World 2, I don't then earn it back in Train Sim World.
Correct.
Okay. If I've created scenarios using the scenario planner, can I earn experience points off that? Will that contribute as well towards my overall shiny gaining?
Your action points, yes, it does. Yeah, it's still a good experience. It's still driving. There's not really any benefit. There's not really any way you can cheat the action points with that. You're still driving trains, stopping trains, and completing instructions. So yes, that does still contribute to your action points and your experience.
Got a clarification question relating to the livery editor. This is a drop-in for you. We said that you could apply 300 layers to a train. Is that per entire consist, or is that per unit of per vehicle, I guess?
Per vehicle. It's per vehicle. So in an ICE3 with 8 vehicles, that's each vehicle has its own 300 layers.
Right. So that would be 2,400.
If you say so.
Yeah, I do. I'm double checking myself in my head, but I'm moving on to the next question just in case I am vastly wrong. So there you are. It is per vehicle and not per whatnot consist.
But it isn't. But what that doesn't give you is 2,400 layers on the first vehicle. It is per vehicle.
Right, got you. Okay, right, moving on. The next section, our last section for this evening, is on the subject of the scenario planner, because we've got more questions coming up on that than we covered last time round. Can scenarios be edited to change which train the player drives?
Yeah, if you can't edit the scenarios that come with the route add-ons, but if you've made a scenario, then you can go back into that scenario and quite easily change the train that scenario is using.
Okay, so I mean that's just a straightforward edit and tweak, right?
Yes. It's edit, press confirm a few times to get through the path questions, and then when it asks you what the train is, you pick a different train.
Will we be able to set up AI trains only and then spawn in walking around on foot so I can spend the entire day larking around in a station?
No. Scenario planner is focused around creating player driving train type experiences within AI trains moving around that. There's nothing to stop you not driving your train and getting out of the train and walking around the platform and stubbornly refusing to move your train, but you can't set it up that way effectively by spawning on foot in the first place.
So have you got some paths set up that lead to sidings or depots, that kind of thing, so that there is at least places that I can put my train that is not going to interrupt the flow of every other piece of traffic?
That there may be on some routes and not on others. That's something that's sort of come up late on in this development cycle. So we may go back and review pathing. But again, this is Scenario Planner is a V1, so it's this counts as one of those creative alternate uses of some of the functionality, and we want to hear what people want to do. That's, well, if you gave me this, then I could do that. Then hey, that would be really cool. It might be really easier for us to do for you.
Okay. Will the passenger information screens display my route? Now, we know they're only on Bakerloo. Presumably they'll be on more stuff in the future, but that's presumably. It means nothing. Will passenger information screens show the scenario that I've created?
No. So at the moment, passenger information screens work based on data which is created through process we use for making the simulations of the timetables. So when we author all the services into a timetable, we then go through a process where it simulates it over a 24-hour period and gets all of a ton of data out. And then the PIS uses that data, which is not there in the way that when you make your own scenarios. So again, it's one of the things that's on our how do we solve that problem. But as of currently, it's service mode that will really deliver that.
Okay. Will it be possible by using a series of scenarios to create there and back runs? So let's say I want to go from Brighton to Eastbourne and come back again on the East Coastway. Can I set up scenarios to allow that to happen?
Oh, totally. Through a course of multiple scenarios. So any one scenario must be a journey from A to B. So Brighton to Eastbourne. It can't be Brighton to Eastbourne to Brighton. That would be two journeys. So you go Brighton to Eastbourne in one scenario, and you call that part one. And then you create a new scenario called part two, and you time it to be, coincidentally 10 minutes after the last one ended, and then you would then build an Eastbourne to Brighton version of a scenario in the scenario planner. And you could do that as many times as you want, call them part 1, 2, 3, 4, and then run them one after the other. You certainly can do that.
Okay. Scenarios. Can I make one that runs for an entire day? So, it's just shoving AI trains back and forth constantly.
AI trains have the same restrictions in terms of they have to do one journey. So we don't put any time limitations on how long a scenario can run for. So it's really down to what AI you can create. If the AI you create can result in a 4-hour, 6-hour scenario, then we won't stop you doing that. The game, the planner imposes no time constraints.
Okay, there was another East Coastway question that is unrelated that I'm going to answer now. Is the East Coastway that is included in Train Sim World 2 Deluxe Edition, is that the fully upgraded new version? Yes, it is. It is the preserved collection version. So it is the fully compatible kind of reworking of East Coastway. Can scenarios, when asked, that's a question I just answered and I hadn't marked it as done. But the next one probably starts can scenarios anyway. Will Scenario Planner make use of PZB and all German route and loco combinations?
Yeah, so PZB is a function of the locomotives and the trains that you're driving. So as with all scenarios and services in the game, that functionality starts disabled. And then if you as a player want to enable it for your journey, you can do that. So you can't script in click this button to turn the PZB on type hints that you would see in some of the scenarios that we create, but it's not locked out. So you can, when you fire up the scenario, you can just immediately run around, switch all the services systems on that you want to use, and then start driving with all that. So the route's got it, the train's got it, you just turn it on.
Okay. Will the AI trains in the scenario planner stay at the end stations, or will we be able to have them drive off and disappear into portals as we do on some of our pre-designed routes?
So with the way the scenario planner works, trains will drive from A to B and then sit at B. They can't use portals.
Okay, so wherever they finish, that's where they stop.
Yeah.
So
if you're doing traffic and you're doing it, if you're going Eastbourne to Brighton and you want all of the traffic to be Brighton to Eastbourne, you'd stop one at Eastbourne, next one at Polegate, or Hampden Park, next one at Polegate. So you'd stop them stations going back from each other, because by the time you go past them, it doesn't matter where they stop. To be honest, they're going to be behind you.
I see. So if I'm following another train up to a terminus station, there does need to be a platform ready for me to go into.
Yes, it will. You could send it to, say, platform 1 and you go into platform 2, for example, assuming that paths are there to support that on the particular journey that you're trying to create. Then you do need to. It does need to go somewhere, and then you would need somewhere to go as well, and they need to be different places. So you can share paths. You can't end at the same place.
Okay. Well, I mean, the last question is an obvious one. Are we planning to upgrade the scenario planner over time?
So as mentioned earlier on, this is version 1, and we want to see what people do, how they use it. It's a big feature, just like the livery designer. So we want to really see how people use it and what you want from it, and then we can sort of take a view from there. We know what we want to do with it. We've got a gun. We've got a wish list the size of the building for things we want to do with it. But actually, we want to know what you want to do with it.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, basically, once you've got your hands on it and you've started making your own scenarios and playing them and experimenting, you'll be in a really good place to let us know, actually, it doesn't do this very well, or I'd love it if it went a little bit further in this direction or that direction. And that's what we want to hear, because we want to make sure that whatever it is we're building is something you actually want. And that's why we need your feedback. So that brings us to the end of this Q&A. Now, we did not get through all the questions. I've said this a couple of times before, but I'll say it again for those who turned up late. This is the 5th Q&A stream. We have titled those Q&As pretty well to give you an indication of what we're talking about in them. So if you have a question that we haven't answered this evening, do check the titles of the previous Q's and A's to see if it is something that we've probably answered before. Meanwhile, I will put a text version of all of the questions that we have answered already, plus the ones we didn't get to today, and those will be up starting from Monday next week and completing as soon as I've completed them, which might take me a little while, because there's a lot. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Train Sim World 2 is out next Thursday. Let's do a repeat of the pre-order rules. Where can you pre-order it? Go on, Matt. Go on.
Steam.
Right.
Pre-order it on Steam.
And is there a discount?
The pre-order discount is 10% if you don't own it and 15% if you do own it.
If that's own it as in TSW 2020.
TSW 2020.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay. So there's no pre-order on consoles.
There is no pre-order on consoles. That is correct.
I just said that. So what is there on consoles?
There is a launch discount. So once the game is launched on Xbox and PlayStation, there is a 15% loyalty discount on both Xbox and PlayStation. But on PlayStation, you will need to make sure you purchase it through the in-game store within Train Sim World 2020 to get that discount.
Right. If you try and do it from the PlayStation store, it will not show the discount. I mean, feel free to not use the discount. That's entirely up to you. But there's no launch day discount on Steam. What do you get instead?
So on Steam, we're doing a Preserved Collection discount sale from launch, which will be 35% off Roots and 20% off Locos from the Preserved Collection that's coming out immediately, which is the Peninsula Corridor, the Hauptstrecke Rhine-Ruhr, and the East Coastway.
We've made that really easy for everybody to just remember off the top of their heads, right? It's not like you need a secret decoder wheel to work out exactly if I can shave an extra percentage off something somewhere. Anyway, anyone would think we were trying to sell it to you. We'll see you next week. So next week, we're going to be running through all the routes once more with gameplay. We'll try and do it in a way that allows you to see all of the things you like. Can you get this video as a background screensaver? I don't know. I'll save the video and we'll find out if there's a means of distributing it. It's not a very good video. I just kind of stay put for 2 hours. Yeah, I know. That's how I spent my lunchtime. Well, admittedly, I did other things. I just left it recording. And then we'll be revealing the roadmap for the first time on Tuesday, where you will then, in the evening, be able to answer questions. Obviously, it's evening if you're in Europe. It'll be an entirely different time of day if you're somewhere else in the world. And then on Wednesday, we'll be covering something else. Probably Bakerloo line. Probably Bakerloo line on Wednesday, and then Thursday is launch day, and we'll see you there because they're not letting us stop streaming anytime soon. Apart from now, where we're able to stop streaming and go and do something else. Thank you very much for tuning in. A delight to see you all as ever. If you do have questions, stick them on the forum as long as you're sure they haven't already been asked. And even then, you'll probably still stick him on the forum and someone will give you the answer. Thanks very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day and we'll catch up with you very soon.